Good evening, everyone, and welcome to round number 8 of the Radical Race Series 2022, season number 3, with myself, Daniel Handover. Joining me is Ewan O'Leary alongside once again. So, moving forward, just about to get into qualifying now, but we're going to go through just a brief opening before we do move on. Suzuka, fantastic circuit, very long circuit for these cars, another new circuit to the SR10. And I think we've seen that these cars can have some very, very good racing. We've seen that they can have some very, very close racing as well. I'm sure someone like Suzuka that's got a bit of everything, it's going to provide, as well as we have seen this season, some good racing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we've come to expect from these cars, of course, but it is going to be more challenging to overtake here than it has been at other race circuits throughout this calendar. Even Phillip Island, where we were at 1 week ago, to expect that to be kind of tight and twisty and difficult to overtake. We actually saw a fantastic race, but maybe my favourite of the season, actually. It was a really nice race last week, but I think this is going to be a different story. It's going to be a game of patience. You're going to have to wait to make those overtakes, and we're going to see a lot of mistakes from drivers today as well. While these guys are very well versed in the Radical field, and in terms of this car, obviously they're getting to grips with it, but getting more and more confident every week. This is the circuit where you're most likely to see mistakes, because just a slight bit of a misplacing of the car can see you off the road very quickly. So I do expect to see, unfortunately, quite a few cars off today as well.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a good point to make. There isn't that much in terms of leeway when it comes to Suzuka, and also as well, this is a very, very heavy circuit on tyres. Take away you take a look at the S's right at the very start of the lap in Sector 1. I mean, that's a very, very aggressive place. In terms of your tyre degradations, a lot of wear there. There's also a lot of temperature build-up within the tyre, and they go through that several times, obviously, because they're going to go through around about 15 or 16 different laps here. So they're going to go through that section quite a few times. Also as well, take 130R, fastest corner on the circuit. I don't think it's going to be flat out in the Radicals. We'll have to wait and see. But they're going to be massive tyre build-up as well. So something to really, really keep an eye on for the tyre degradation in this race. Looking at championship standings, though, it's a slightly smaller grid today, so it might certainly shake up the field, at least in the mid-pack. Anyway, Luke Maxwell, Simon Edwards and Jamie Bird are currently your top 3. We do have Simon Edwards, Luke Maxwell and Jamie Bird all here for this round number 8, which is obviously going to be good. Mike Busson is also here. Graham Brown is also here as well. Paul Clark, again, currently 6th in the championship standings. Martin Ward 7th. They're both here as well. Michael LeMay and Paul LeMay, unfortunately the LeMay brothers are not here, so they will be dropping down the order a little bit, as well as a couple of others aren't here with us today for round number 8. However, that is going to mean that some drivers are going to be moving up the field quite significantly in the championship standings.
Yeah, it certainly does, and things are staying very close. I mean, we're certainly starting to get a top 2 kind of form themselves away, but then when you get behind that, it doesn't take very many points for you to really gain a lot of positions, and you can just see by the movers and shakers from the last race. Paul LeMay wasn't there, but he dropped 5 places because of his absence, and Dominic Lamb-Webb dropped 7 places after no points scored either. So you can really gain and lose a lot of places behind that top 2 very, very quickly here. And I'm looking at Graham Brown in particular with regards to that, because he put a very good practice time in, was second place, but only by less than 100th of a second in that one in the end of that practice session there. And he, at the moment, is in 5th place in those standings, but only 15 points behind Jamie Bird in 3rd. He is a very hot candidate maybe to get back into that top 3 in the standings by the end of the day.
We'll have to wait and see. First lap times are going to be coming on the board now. Graham Brown does set the time. He sets the benchmark with a 152.181 as it stands. We'll have to see again what that gap's come down to, because Simon Edwards, he goes in with a 152.67. So that's relatively close. Again, half a second in it. Here comes Martina Ward. Paul Clark's just set the 3rd fast lap. Again, we've got a few more drivers left to go. And there's a 10-minute session, bear in mind. So these times will certainly come down as the tyres build up temperature. Martina Ward with 153.85. There's Luke Maxwell's time. 152.76. So at the moment, Graham Brown, very, very strong performance. Very strong performance, in fact. Currently, as it stands, Dave Rolliston, what's he able to do for his first lap? It is a 153.45. So it's good enough for 6th place currently. A couple more drivers left to go. Jamie Bird, one of the next drivers about to cross the line. What can Jamie Bird do on his first opening qualifying lap? Doesn't seem to be actually on the timing tower. So obviously an off-track somewhere, which did disallow that lap. Phil Glover's just about to cross the line. Where is he going to go? Phil Glover goes in currently P8 with a 153.86. So the 53s seem to be the majority at the moment, with only the top 3 actually being in the 52s. Graham Brown nearly in the 51s. He set a few more personal bests, so he's actually set a few more session bests. So we're going to see a very, very quick time here. I would imagine a 51 in qualifying is going to be almost a guarantee.
Yeah, it looked like it. That was the kind of region we reached in practice. It was a mid-40 at 51. 51.6, I think, was the best time from Graham Brown and Simon Edwards, I think, who were 1 and 2 in that session, both in the mid-51s. So expecting to be there by the end of this session. However, they're still kind of warming up and winding up a little bit at the moment. As Brown comes over the line right now. See if he gets any closer. He is into the 51s, and it is a 51.6. He was able to go 200ths of a second faster than that in practice. However, it's still a very strong time, and it's one that Simon Edwards can't really get near.
No, he has got... Well, he's pulled half a second. Now the gap's gone almost another half a second that he's taken off of his time. A little bit wide into 1, but he manages to keep it. Paul Clark's actually gone up into 3rd. Notice that there. It's still close down in the midfield, though. Have a look at the intervals. It's still very, very close, so expected to see some good times there. What's Damien G going to do for his second lap? 154.54 was the first lap that number 40G did. Is he going to improve on this lap time as he comes across the line? Doesn't look like he has, no. So he stays at the moment in P9. Dave Rolliston's just pushed Mike Busson down. They've swapped positions, 5th and 6th. That's not how you take turn 1 into turn 2. That's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on, because that's a very, very tricky corner, especially you're going in flat out, and then as soon as you turn in, you have to start thinking about slowing the car down for turn 2. So, again, towards the end of the race, when the tyres are really, really starting to struggle a little bit, that's going to be interesting to see how the driver was able to cope. I feel the drivers that have done a race run in testing are going to be at a potentially more of an advantage than people that haven't, because they're going to be able to understand what the tyres are going to do, especially in that final third of the race. And that may be an advantage to them, especially if they can look after their tyres a little bit more, etc., etc. Again, only time will tell. We're only going to, we'll be able to find out in the next half hour what actually what that does entail. But Dave Rolliston, currently 5th still. Last lap was at 53.14. He's very close to the 52s, but the benchmark to be in the 52s to make another position is 52.58 by Paul Clark. So he's got to pull a little bit of time out, over half a second he's got to try and find to get up into 4th position. If he is able to manage to do it. Graham Brown's actually extended his time even more, as he's just done a 51.463. So Graham Brown, certainly the star of the qualifying session so far. Luke Maxwell has jumped up, though, into P2. But even then, he still hasn't actually managed to hit at 51. He's ever so slightly out of it, 52.033. So over half a second. Now, even a lengthy track like Suzuka, that's still a pretty big time gain.
Yeah, I mean, this is quite a long circuit, as you mentioned already, but the twists and turns make it just seem a little bit longer, and there's so many places where you can gain and lose time here. It does mean that the gaps between first and last do get very, very big indeed. It's probably, I mean, I can't remember a bigger pole margin we've seen this season so far, over half a second between Brown and Luke Maxwell there. And just look at Dave Dowson right at the back there, 3.5 seconds away from Graham Brown. That is, you know, a little bit harsh maybe on those guys who are further down towards the back, but there's so many corners around here. It's such a long circuit. There's so many places where you can gain and lose time. It means that the gap between first and last is absolutely huge, and there's going to be some really big gaps by the end of this race as well because of that fact. So it looks down a little bit harshly on those down at the back, but that doesn't take anything away from Graham Brown and his performance there. He went faster than pretty much anybody has done in that practice session where they had ages to go quickly. He was the only driver able to convert a 1:51 in that qualifying there. So fair play to him, and he's going to look to control the race from here now.
Absolutely, very, very true. I think Dave Dowson's trying to do some practice starts we can see. So it's interesting seeing the different amounts of throttle you can see. There we are. That was a better launch there going. You can see as soon as you spin the rears up on this, that's it. The car's done. It's very, very hard to then try and find that. Unfortunately, Phil Glover's going to run out of time because we are about to jump over into the race. The 10-minute lone qualifying is nearly up. So we are about to go into the race. We'll get you your full grid position. But as you say, you know, certainly not taking anything away from the drivers. But Luke Maxwell did improve on his final lap with a 152 dead, but still just wasn't quite in that 51. But again, even so, half a second of time has been gained from Graham Brown in that qualifying session. Here is your official grid position. So Graham Brown does indeed start on pole position. Maxwell second, Simon Edwards in P3, Paul Clark fourth, Martina Ward takes fifth, Dave Rollerson sixth, Jamie Bird in seventh, Mike Buston in eighth, Phil Glover ninth, Damien G P10, and then Dave Dowson P11. So like we said, a slightly smaller grid, but that is not going to detract from the racing here one bit. What we just need to make sure of now is everyone manages to get through turn 1, turn 2, nice and cleanly. The only fear is if you do have a bit of a spin, you're going to be a little bit more on your own for more of this race. So it is in everyone's best interest to make sure they go through and they maintain and carry on, at least with the first lap anyway, nice and smooth. There doesn't need to be too much fighting. You've got time, remember, as well. That's the other thing. You do have plenty of time. Speaking of which, yeah, there's going to be around 15 or 16 laps, I would imagine. Actually, there may be a couple more. I think there might be 17 or 18, depending on, I believe, what we're going to see. Based on the lap times, so around about 153, 150. So probably going to be a race average, I imagine, would be in the 52s for the majority of it. So we can probably expect... Actually, no, I'm thinking maybe more than that. I'm thinking probably 18, 19 laps, actually. I think that's maybe more so what I'm thinking. Anyway, we'll have to find out in a second. But lights are about to come on. You hear the turbos are all being spooled up. And it is away we go. Who gets the best start? I think it's going to be, in all honesty, Graham Brown's got a very, very good start going down into turn 1. Although Luke Maxwell tries to make it. He's going to go possibly up the inside. He is on the inside going into turn 2. But Graham Brown tries to hold it. Can't quite do it, though. So Maxwell taking advantage of the inside line and a slightly tighter line. But he's compromised going into the S's. The start of them anyway. Manages to run in single file now as they all come through the second half of the S's. Maxwell a little bit wide on that second half. Is Graham Brown going to get a cutback? He tries to. Can't quite manage it, though. All sits behind. You can see, again, this is going to be a potential setup going down into the double right. And it's, again, single file. No. Everyone managed to get through relatively clean. A little bit further down, side by side, between Phil Glover and Jamie Bird. They're going to go through side by side. This is a brave move, especially on the opening laps. Tries to get it. No, Jamie Bird goes off. And Phil Glover manages to slot back through. I wonder, are we going to see Jamie Bird? Does he... I think he avoided the wall, in all honesty. I did think he avoided the wall. No. If he did, it was only a tyre barrier, so it wasn't the end of the world.
Yeah, well, that's true. But it is so hard to stop when you're on the gravel like that on the outside. It's impossible to keep it out the wall almost, especially at Technics 2 there. So we'll wait and see whether he did get the wall or not. However, I think it wasn't good news for Jamie Bird either way. A nice start from Luke Maxwell though, and Graham Brown was fairly generous to him on the inside line at turn 1 there. Didn't want a lap 1 incident, which you can't really blame him for. However, it does mean he's lost that first place, and now he's going to have to try and win that back as Martina Ward has been off that spoon curve by the looks of things.
We'll see if we can get a replay of that. Yeah, as you say, everyone managing, up the front of the field, single file. Simon Evans going a little bit wide there. That'll be him on the grass. That would have cost him a little bit of time. The main thing, though, to keep in mind is a little bit of dirt on the tyres. That will slow him down, obviously, even more. Let's have a quick look at what happened then to Martina Ward. I think it's just an off-track. Doesn't seem to be anything else. Is it just a little bit too aggressive on throttle? Yeah, a little bit too aggressive on throttle. You can see the car just goes through. That's not a particularly fantastic camera angle there. Doesn't really do justice. I don't think there's any damage, in all honesty. Let's see if we can grab another camera angle of that. I think it's going to be... Oh, there was a tap. So there was a tap. But I don't think it did too much damage.
No, I think she'll get away with that. There wasn't heavy contact with the wall on the side there, so it will unsettle the balance of the car, and it won't be nice through the S's maybe. It might feel a tiny bit different, but I don't think it's going to affect things too much. If you do knock these cars out of whack a little bit in terms of the aerodynamics and the way they work with the bodywork and whatever, it can really unsettle the cars, maybe more than what you would see in other cars that are not quite downforce orientated. However, I do think that light of a contact will be absolutely fine as the leaders make their way out of the hairpin and towards spoon curve now as well. Luke Maxwell under a bit of pressure here. You can definitely see that Graham Brown is arguably the strongest driver in this little group here. He's certainly closest to the car in front out of everybody in this front group of 4 or 6 or whatever you'd like to say. And he's pulling the most distance to the car behind as well. So he's doing a decent job at the moment. But Luke Maxwell is going to just try and hold on as long as possible. Way through 130. Oh, and there's a spin for Luke Maxwell, who's straight into the wall, and Graham Brown is gifted the lead. Luke Maxwell off at 130R, big contact with the
Massive.
Wall, and he's now, dropping way down, and he will have big damage.
Massive damage, absolutely, yeah. Car, unfortunately, I mean, he might get away with at least. The car doesn't look all that. I thought it'd be more damage than that. I thought it'd at least lose the front nose cone. But yeah, that was a big... You just see a tiny bit too much over the curb, and that was it. Car decided that it didn't want to continue on that particular racing line. Let's have a quick look, if we can, at what happened. So yeah, drops it over the curb. Just drops it over the edge of the curb, going over, actually past the curb, onto the AstroTurf. And, I mean, it's in the tyre barrier, so could have been a lot worse. You see a few drivers locking up there just in the... I'm almost wondering if Luke has actually got too much damage. Because I know it was a big hit, but it was in a tyre barrier. And there was almost a brush of the front, and then it spun the car round. So obviously tyres won't be particularly liking what just happened there. But I'm just thinking if there was actually less damage than what we initially realised with that.
Yeah, maybe. It may not be all visual damage. Here it is. Just on the outside of that curb, just where the red and white curb kind of levels off and it turns to AstroTurf, there's a little bit of a kind of rise between those two. There's a bit of gap there, and it meant that it instantly spun Luke Maxwell around. Martina Ward, by the way, has gone off in the first sector, I think, as well, and returned back to the pit lane after Jamie Bird has been for a trip down pit lane, repairing a bit of damage, maybe. From that contact a little bit earlier on, but yeah, this race has already been an attritional one with at least 3 cars ending up off the road. This is how Martina Ward did get off the road for the second time.
Ooh.
And Matt, more damage this time with no rear wing.
Unfortunately, car is it's going to be pretty undrivable there, in all honesty. I looked in the top left. I don't know what I was talking about 18 laps. It's 13 laps. I was wildly out over that, wildly wrong. About what the laps are actually going to be. So there we are. But anyway, 4 laps of the 13 have been completed. And now what we do have is obviously remaining 9 left to go. So Graham Brown, Simon Edwards, they've pulled a gap of about 1.5 seconds on Mike Busson, who's currently sitting in P3, and he's doing a very stellar job of it as well. He's got 2.5 seconds on Dave Rolliston, so he's running about pretty comfortably. Bear in mind, he started all the way down in P8, so he's moved up. Certainly, Luke Maxwell has indeed gone to the pit lane, I believe, to repair the car. So, yes, the damage was enough for him to bring him into the pits. So, yeah, unfortunately, this is going to be, as you say, a bit of a lonely race now for Luke Maxwell, unfortunately. But at the same time, you know, it is something that we're able to. Anything can happen. He's already back out. You can just see on the left-hand side of your screen. He is already back out from the timing tower. So all he needs to do now is run and just see. There may be some points to be able to catch up. Luckily, and said in one respect, because the grid is slightly smaller, he won't actually be losing as many points to his competitors, Graham Brown, Simon Edwards, Busson, etc. So damage limitation here is all that Luke Maxwell needs to worry about now. He doesn't need to worry about anything else, just needs to run, and the rest of the race needs to be clean. And he will at least gain some points within this championship leading it. Because he is still leading. He's leading by a comfortable margin at the moment. So he has got some points in hand. He can't afford too many of these mistakes. But he does have some points in hand that if mistakes like this do come about, it's not the end of the world. Obviously, you know, the last, you don't want them, of course. But it's something that you can manage with.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Luke Maxwell just needs to continue on purely for the points almost at this stage. You've already seen 3 drivers fall by the wayside, so one may more go as well, at least one more, and that will be more points as well. But you've got to think about the championship here. He is leading that championship by 16 points, 24 points, I should say, at this point in time. And so he just needs to try and get what he can as Paul Clark just runs a little bit wide through Spoon Curve. If things were to end right now, the gap would be reduced to 11 points for Simon Edwards. So there's a nice fight shaping up for the final 4 races of the season. But Luke Maxwell can't get anything if he doesn't get to the end of the race. So he does need to try and do that. And of course, this can be one of his drop rounds if indeed the rest of the season goes well for him.
Well, that's, again, very, very good point. The drop rounds do take that into account. So, you know, there's lots of things that we've got to... lots of ways that you've got to take into consideration. This is why drop rounds can be pretty important. If you work it out and you have a very strong season with one slightly off race, I mean, yeah, it won't actually affect you all that much. Dave Dowson is being pressured a little bit by Paul Clark. He's not being... the gap is hovering around about anywhere between 0.6 to 0.4. As Paul Clark decided he didn't want to be a part of the race for a brief moment. There, his internet wasn't particularly happy at that particular moment. Yeah, it hovers anywhere from around 0.4 to 0.6 of a second. It's going to be a little bit less now because Dave Dowson has gone a little bit wide. He's missed the second half of Spoon Curve, turn 14 massively. So this is going to allow Paul Clark, look at the draft that he's able to get here. This could potentially be a move. He's going to go around the outside, going through 130R. That's a brave move. That's a very brave move. Is he going to be able to do it? We're going to find out. Turn 15. In fact, he's actually, do you know what? I was looking at the timing tower, and at that point didn't realise that he'd already actually made the move even before the corner. So there we go. Paul Clark moving up into 7th place. And to be fair, quite wise from Dave Dowson. There was no point, you know, going too wide down into... 130 is pretty much game over for at least one of you, potentially 2. So it's not really worth doing that. May as well just let the position happen and then actually attack it at some point later down the line. Bear in mind, you know, we're only halfway through the race yet, so still a little bit of time to go. But we will have to see. Mike Busson, that's the next closest gap. So Mike Busson and Simon Edwards. Buston's been really, really pushing the time, and he's been catching up to Simon Edwards consistently over the last few laps. That last lap actually caught up 0.6 of a second. So Simon Edwards is getting is being put under a little bit more pressure. The other thing that Graham Brown at the moment, Graham Brown doesn't actually have to worry about anything because he's currently got a second gap, or actually 1.2 that you can see on the timing tower now. If Buston and Edwards start catching and battling with one another, even better for Graham Brown. Actually, to be fair, better for Dave Rolliston, because that gap, 5.3 seconds, if there's a big battle that goes on, that gap is going to come tumbling down. So if we look from Dave Rolliston's perspective, he'll just be able to see, in certain parts of the track, he'll just be able to see what's going on up ahead. So if we can just stay on this sort of pace at the moment, maybe try and, you know, high 52s, if Bedwards and Button start battling, that gap is going to come down. It's not going to come down at the rate if they drive in single file. He needs for them to battle. We'll have to see, because the gap has come down once again by another 1/10 and a half. Button is really, really putting the pressure on the back of Simon Edwards.
Yeah, he's trying at the moment. I was going to say, really, Graham Brown doesn't need the help, really, of Mike Bousson trying to get through on Simon Edwards. It's much more playing into the hands of Dave Rolleston here. See if he can maybe get on terms. That is a big gap, and I don't think he's quite got the pace to stay with them. You can just see there, he lost 1.6 seconds on that last lap, even despite the battling and sort of pressure that's being applied. We say pressure obviously being applied, and it obviously affects the driver in front quite a lot. Well, Simon Edwards did his best lap of the race so far on the previous lap. Clearly it's not getting to him very much at all at the moment. He's clearly focusing on his own race, and that is one of the advantages of this circuit, I suppose, and being so hard to overtake. You can push the threat of overtake to the back of your mind a little bit and just keep your eyes forward, keep your pace going, and then maybe you'll not get pressure from behind. So that is helping Simon Edwards just a little bit. David Rolleston really does need to try and close in, because we are after all about halfway into this race now, and time will certainly be running out.
Indeed, as you say, time is starting to run out. Damien G is on for a potential move here on Phil Glover. Depends if Phil Glover, again, he's just got to maintain. He takes a slightly defensive line that unfortunately is going to cost him, but he manages to get a very, very good exit. Damien G gets caught up a little bit on the exit there, but now the draft comes in. It's very, very strong, the draft is in these cars, especially at a long circuit like this. Cars actually almost look a little bit too small in a certain way, actually, for this sort of circuit. Again, maybe with the grid that we saw at the start of the season, maybe with a 15, 16 car grid, it'd fit a little bit more sort of in place. But yeah, these cars are so small at a track like this. It just seems like they're just a little bit too small for the circuit, even though they do produce very, very good racing. I'm wondering if there's a potential move down into the Casio Triangle Complex. There's a bit of a lift there for Damien G as the downforce is lifted, so he does have to take it a little bit more cautiously through 130R. Again, more of a defensive line from Phil Glover. I probably wouldn't be wanting to defend too much. That was a brave attempt there from Damien G. He wants the position. Again, I would be patient at this point. It seems that Damien G has the pace at the moment in this stage of the race. I would just be a little bit... Actually, I've realised why he wants to be making the move relatively sharpish, because... Oh, Paul Clark went for a move then. Wow, I've just realised why Damien G was trying to get past Phil Glover, because he wants to get a gap in between himself and Paul Clark, because Paul Clark's trying to work his way through the field now, as is Dave Dowson. So this has become a four-way train very, very quickly. Dave Dowson's got front row seats to what's going to happen all ahead of him, because he's at the back of this train. But yeah, Paul Clark wanted to get past Damien G, and obviously Damien G wanted to get past Phil Glover, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that was so close going down turn one with Paul Clark trying to get through. He had to take to the curb and the grass just a little bit to make that move. But you mentioned the car's looking a little bit small for the circuit. I know what you mean, but I do think that's a good thing. If you think about Formula 1 cars and how big they're getting and how impossible it is to overtake sometimes, it's not helped by the fact that they're 3 meters wide these days. You know, the fact these cars are a bit smaller, leaving a bit more road to left and right, means that overtaking is promoted a little bit, and you can actually overtake. So I don't think it's a bad thing at all, the way these radicals look on this circuit, although there's something wrong with that line, you would say. But Paul Clark just going that little bit wide, although you're not really punished for it anymore at Spoon Curve, because, of course, they've all that tarmac that arguably gives you a better run onto this straight.
Well, yeah, exactly. As you say, you know, if you get a good run, sometimes a compromise potentially through some corners can then give you a slight advantage on others. You know, it's all about... Whoa, that was... Paul Clark is pushing this car very, very hard. Unfortunately, that has lost him a little bit of time. He took a slightly defensive line. He's taken a very defensive line because obviously he wants to make sure that Dave Dowson doesn't get by. Compromises himself a little bit on exit, so that's back the pack up once again. Phil Glover is doing a very, very good job at defending these positions at the moment. I've noticed that Mike Busson has had a moment somewhere because the gap has opened up a little bit. Only a small percentage. It's opened up about 0.6 of a second, but has opened up nevertheless. So Mike Busson's going to have to do all of that work all over again. Yeah, this is the train that we still want to be keeping an eye out for at the moment. The likes of Dave Rolleston, again, had a very, very clean race at the moment on his own. He's not really, again, been in too much trouble. He's made up a couple of positions, started in P6, now he's running in P4. So really, a nice, solid race so far for Rollerston, number 262. Graham Brown still 1.5 seconds ahead, currently of Simon Edwards. Bear in mind as well, Simon Edwards is not a slow driver. Neither is Busson. So doing a very, very strong performance here. Again, this is where it now comes into tyre management in this final third of the race. Only 4 laps to go here, bear in mind. So this is the crucial point here. How has everyone looked after their tyres? Because it can all change at this moment here.
Yeah, absolutely. Still 4 laps to go, though, as you say, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it equates to nearly 10 minutes of racing. So time is a little bit on these guys' side. Although if you are Dave Dowson and maybe looking to get this top 5, then maybe you do need to get a bit of a move on here. For Damien G, though, time is definitely on his side at the moment. He's got Phil Glover just in front, and he'll feel like there's a chance here. I don't think Phil Glover has finished it in the top 5 this season, and he's not got very many points so far, indicating what his results have been. So it will be massive for any of these guys to grab a top 5 here today, and we'll see if they can manage it. But for the moment, Phil Glover's just defending well. Damien G is biding his time because he does have that little bit on his side, although he's now invited Paul Clark and Dave Dowson into this group, and that does mean he has to look forwards and backwards at the same time now, which is never ideal.
No, with the position that you want to be in, you want to be, well, I mean, yeah, either you want to be at the front, but even then, I'd want to be, in some respects, I'd want to be at the back of this train. I'd want to be Dave Dowson, especially at this point. Towards the end of the race, you obviously want to be a little bit further up. But Dave Dowson hasn't got anyone behind at all. Well, Luke Maxwell's behind, but he's 35 seconds back. So he hasn't got anyone to worry about behind him. He can just solely focus at this point on just looking after his tyres, and then maybe in the final couple of laps, then making some moves. Whereas, again, being at the front, obviously you've got more pressure, you've got to defend heavier, defend more aggressively potentially, and that will slow you down. So, yeah, I'd want to be Dave Dowson at this point, and then coming on to the final lap, I'd probably want to be, I almost think, Damien G. Possibly for, everyone's got a personal preference. I don't mind defending, but I'd prefer being in a position where I'm able to pressure someone. I think that just works for me personally and how I drive towards the end of the race, but everyone is different. Phil Glover, though, doing an absolutely stellar job of defending from Damien G, Paul Clark and Dave Dowson, doing a very, very good job indeed. Bear in mind, Phil Glover's made up 4 positions, started in P9, has now made his way up to P4. That's another very, very wide line there from Paul Clark. Misses the apex ever so slightly, so that again would have cost him a little bit of time. So now what's going to happen with Damien G? He goes forward. Let's have a look at Paul Clark again. Is there going to be a possible move? It's going to be brave in 130 yard. No way. He's going to try and do it. Oh, and unfortunately, he's pressured Damien G into making a mistake. This is going to work wonders for Phil Glover. He's going to be able to pull away as long as he takes a normal racing line. He keeps it all in check. That has given him a little bit of breathing room. It's given him about half a second of breathing room, but unfortunately didn't get the best exit off of the Casio Triangle Chicane Complex. So out of turn 18, didn't get the best run. Turn 17 even. I'll get it right one of these days. So the gap really hasn't changed all that much. One gap that has changed, if we look a little bit further up the field, moving on, Simon Edwards has been reeled in by Mike Busson once again. But the time is running out, as they say. He's only got 2 laps left to go. So not only has he got to catch up to Mike Busson, which he has pulled half a second out, but he's then got to try and pass as well. And that's an entirely different issue.
I have to say I'm pretty impressed with Simon Edwards in the way that he's been able to keep Graham Brown so close, because looking at the qualifying times, I thought Brown would be streets ahead at this point. And looking at the way he started this race as well, because he got this gap pretty early on, pretty early after Luke Maxwell fell by the wayside. So he's done a very good job here as Simon Edwards to just keep Brown close, but he's never going to be able to challenge him for the win, surely, in normal circumstances. Mike Bousson certainly will be able to challenge him for that second place, though, and the pressure's going to be on here in these final 2 laps. So we'll see if the position changes, but Simon Edwards is going to desperately want to hold on to this place, because losing it would cost him 4 points, and it's 4 points he can't afford to lose in the second half of the season, in a fight like he's never really experienced in his 3 previous victories.
No, as you say, not at all. Paul Clark's gone a bit wide. That's allowed Dave Dowson to actually go through. Apologies for that background motorcycle. If you could hear that, that was very, very loud there. Yeah, Dave Dowson has gone through. Paul Clark has gone wide. I wonder why that is. I'm going to try and see if I can find why. I wonder if Paul Clark... I think Paul Clark went for a move. Did he go for a move? I think he tried to, yeah. He tried to go into 130R. I think he may have gone a little bit too wide.
Oh, this was earlier. This was how he originally got through on Dave Dowson.
Ah, yes.
And I'm pretty convinced that Dowson lifted off there. So that was a few laps ago.
Here we go.
A bit he did go for a move. Oh, he did so well to save that. I was sure that car was going around there, but he did a very, very good job to keep things going in the same direction. And he's not even lost that much time. That was a remarkable save, but it has cost him a position, unfortunately.
Indeed. I've just noticed, though, what's happened to Graham Brown, because Graham Brown is now in the pit lane. We seem to have lost this, and all of a sudden, it's just kicked off massively. 2 laps left to go, bear in mind. Simon Edwards on the second to last lap. Simon Edwards now massively pressured by Mike Buston. He goes a little bit wide, though, on the exit of the hairpin T11. So is this going to cost him? Whoa, this is shame. We need to find out what happened to Graham Brown. Such a shame, because Graham Brown was doing such a good job. Massive, massive shame there. But side by side, they're going to go down into Spoon Curve. Turn 13 on the exit of turn 14. We've got Simon Evers taking a slightly compromised line through 13, but he gets a better exit going on 14. Can Busson hold that line? He does. He manages to hold it. So now the aero is going to be working for him. He's going to get the draft coming down into 130R. There's not going to be a move here, but there possibly may be a move going down into turn 16. The Casio Triangle dips a wheel on the grass as well, trying to maximise the pace going in and also maximise the track usage. Maybe a little bit too much, and grass dipping, a little bit careful of that, but that wasn't necessarily grass dipping, that was just maximising all of the track use. Simon Evans, a very, very slow exit going on the exit of turn number 18. This is going to be a perfect opportunity for Mike Busson to take the lead. And you know what? He's done it way before turn 1, but Simon Edwards manages to get us slightly better. He might be a bit faster, might be running a slightly less downforce setup, but Mike Busson round the outside of turn 1. What a move on the last lap. And Simon Edwards goes a little bit wide. That's opened the gap up. What's that? 0.7 of a second. I'll tell you what, Mike Buston, fair play indeed. Really, really good move. Calculated, both left enough room for each other. Cannot argue with that. Very, very impressive stuff indeed. This, meanwhile, Phil Glover still leading the way in this train here, and it's all of a sudden kicking off. Dave Dowson spins. I think Paul Clark clipped him. Yes, he did. Oh, that's cost. I don't really think that's actually cost any in terms of damage for Paul Clark, but Dave Dowson, just a small spin. It looked like he dipped a wheel on the curb on the outside of 1 there, going into 2. And that's a big, big problem, unfortunately. So Paul Clark has just dropped back from this field, from this train a little bit. So Phil Glover and Damien G both now battling with one another. Now we've got a little bit of time, a small bit of breathing room. Let's just have a look at what happened to Graham Brown. Does he dip a wheel on the curb? Oh, it's just on the curb. Oh, no. I feel so sorry for Graham Brown. Such a brilliant race and a brilliant qualifying as well. But he just dips a wheel on the curb. He just drops over the other side of the curb, actually. That's what caused him. That's what sent him round. We just have another very, very quick look at it. Yeah,
it was just that AstroTurf and that curb on the outside. You just see the way it dips off there in terms of elevation, and the AstroTurf has done for him there. It spins into the wall, I'm afraid, and that is it for Graham Brown. Mike Buston's move at turn 1 as well. Looks like it's going to be enough for this win now. Simon Edwards went wide through 1 and 2 after that move was made, and it looks like it created a race-winning margin.
It absolutely has done. Mike Busson winning by 1.3 seconds at the end of this race. What a drive. Very, very impressive indeed. Mike Busson takes round 8 victory here at Suzuka in the Radical Race Series, season number 3. Very, very good stuff indeed. Simon was second. Dave Rolliston in P3. It's all kicked off, though, right to the very end, going into the Casio Triangle. It's Paul Clark's made the move stick on Damien G on the last, a large-ditch effort going into 16. Manages to hold it, but Phil Glover, what a race from Phil Glover. Really, really well defended there. And he manages to finish in P4. Best result, I believe, that Phil Glover has had, at least this season anyway. Really, really strong performance. Very impressive indeed. I just want to have a look at that move again, because we only caught the last end of that. It was just a very late lunge. He goes a little bit... Actually, to be fair, no, I almost thought he did go a tiny bit deep into 16, but he managed to pull the car back round, so it wasn't like he forced Damien G off. It was just a very, very late lunge and just manages to hold it there. So, you know, a really clean move. Damien G did give him enough room, actually, to be fair. So they both... You know, they both did give each other racing room, I think, there. It was a bit aggressive, but it wasn't anything that was overly aggressive that caused any real major contact there. So really good stuff there from Paul Clark.
Yeah, it was a very nice move. You do often see, especially in those last lap lunges at the Casio Triangle, the final chicane there, some idiotic moves, to be honest, when you're on the final lap, the rush of blood to the head, and it's really kind of... but sometimes those dive bombs and those aggressive moves, they can work if you're skilled enough to make it work. And, of course, credit has to go to Damien G as well for... I don't want to say facilitating it, because that makes it seem like he wanted it to happen, but just allowing the space for Paul Clock there and making sure they all got through cleanly. But it was always bound to happen down into that final chicane. I think Phil Glover will be pretty almost surprised that he got away so freely in that race. He was barely challenged at all in that one. Very surprised that Damien G didn't apply more pressure to him. And a bit surprised that Paul Clark didn't try and do it himself earlier as well. But it was a great race between those guys in the end. They were pretty inseparable and very entertaining to watch throughout.
Absolutely, it very much was indeed. Now, I believe we do have... I'm just going to be... well, hopefully we're going to have a chat with a couple... we're going to have a couple of interviews with our top 3. But yeah, even though, like I said, a slightly smaller grid does not mean we don't have some exciting racing. We definitely have some exciting racing. I really, really do feel sorry, though, for Graham Brown. It's just, such a shame. We've all been in that position, and unfortunately, it's, in some instances, it's not been too bad. Other instances, unfortunately, it's been a bit more of an issue, obviously. But that was a big, big shame there for Graham Brown. So I really, really do feel for him, as I'm sure the everyone that's watching does as well. His coach, actually, Jack Ashton, has been watching this race as well, and I just see in the comments, obviously, at the moment that it happened, and obviously Jack there has been taking him through and building him up. So it's really good to see again just the progress. So fair play to Jack Ashton there. Yeah, like I said, we're going to get a couple of interviews in a second, but yes, a small grid doesn't mean a boring race, because we certainly didn't see that. Everyone managed to get through. That's the other thing. At the start of the race, that's always a bit tricky, especially when you've got a smaller grid, because a small mistake can cost you very, very big, and it can cost you obviously a very, very significant amount of time. So, you do have to be a little bit careful, but everyone managed to hold it through turn 1, hold it through the first lap, build it up gradually, and then they started pushing, which is, in most instances, the perfect way to do it. I've just seen we do have our winner for race number 1. Would you like to have a quick chat with our race winner, Mike Busson?
Yes, let's do that and bring him in. Mike Busson, welcome to the booth. Good to have you here on the back of a race win here at Suzuka. A last lap pass as well. Very dramatic circumstances with Graham Brown, of course, with that incident as well. Just talk us through your thought process through that final 2 or 3 laps, because it did get quite busy towards the end there.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Yeah, I was sort of just, in the long game, being very gentle. Then obviously pulled into the back of towards Simon, I don't know, 3 or 4 laps before the end, but was really struggling with heating up the tyres once I was that close to him, so I sort of backed off a little bit and tried to regroup. Obviously, shame for Graham after such a good performance. Yeah, Simon, I was starting to come back onto the back of him, and I thought, he isn't going to make this easy. The first attempt was a clear indication, but I thought myself, obviously I had a much better run the second time, and I just had to go for it.
Absolutely. I mean, what was the strategy throughout that race? Because you did play a little bit of follow the leader throughout with Simon Edwards. You were pretty close behind him the whole way through. When you did all of a sudden go through on Graham Brown, the both of you, and it became for the lead of the race, did it really change your mindset than what it would have been had you been battling for second place, or were you just waiting for the final lap all the time anyway?
It definitely spurred me on that little bit more. I was happy. I knew Simon was going to be robust, so I wasn't going to risk anything. But yes, when you see a chance of 2 first places on trot on the banks, I thought myself, not to go for it, and just hope, it all comes good, and it did.
Yeah, it absolutely did. So congratulations on victory here tonight, and we look forward to seeing you again over the next few weeks.
And you guys, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Mike Busson there, winner here at Suzuka.
Yes, indeed. Very, very good stuff. Like I said, Mike Buston capitalising on positions to be made. Like I said, one person's misfortune is always someone else's gain. So, and Mike Buston obviously did that perfectly. So, second person we're going to have a very quick chat to is Simon Edwards. Simon, good to catch up with you. Talk us through the race. Unfortunately, towards the, I say unfortunately, obviously with Graham Brown, not the best thing from his perspective, but we capitalised on it, but just couldn't quite just on that last lap. It just, was it the tyres that dropped off, or talk us through it?
Yeah, I'd done a setup with a little bit of understeer in it just to keep the rears happier, but in the end I ran out of tyres about halfway through the race on the front. So I was just desperately managing them, and then I just messed up into that last chicane. Got myself on that curb and couldn't get off it, so gave Mike a run. But he did a fantastic pass on me, so I'm not going to take it away from him.
No, not at all. Of course not. So obviously, actually, moving forward down to the final few races of the season, we have pulled some positions. We have pulled some points back on Luke Maxwell. Ewan is the math wizard. Obviously, he'll be able to tell you in terms of points what you now have, but the gap has come down to under 20 points now going into the final few races. So it's still very much all to play for here. What's your thoughts going into the final third of the season?
Try not let anybody finish in front of me.
That's a good goal to have. Why would you not?
Yeah, the championship this season I've not really focused on. I've been trying to win races in this new car, and if the championship comes, it comes. But I'm enjoying the competition. Everybody's getting up to speed now, as you can see. So it's going to be harder towards the end of the season, I think.
It's certainly going to be. It's definitely not going to be any easier. I don't think that's the thing to take into consideration there. But Simon, really, really good stuff. Again, congrats on another podium for you, and we'll catch up with you all being well next week.
Thank you.
Yeah. There we go. Simon Edwards, P2, very, very strong performance. Now, would you like to have a quick chat with our fourth place finisher? We haven't quite got a conversation in with Dave Rolston, but we can certainly have a conversation with our fourth place finisher, Phil Glover.
Absolutely. Let's do that, Phil. Welcome to the booth. Good to have you here again, and good to see you back inside the top five again. Fourth place here today, but you're in a monumental battle throughout. Just what was that fight like with 4 cars through the majority of that race?
Yeah, it was it was a tricky one, wasn't it? I don't know. I seem to like the track. I mean, it's not easy to pass on, so if you manage your position well, that certainly helps. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it, and it's nice to be in the top 5, as you say, for a change.
Absolutely. I mean, were you a little bit surprised by the guys behind you in terms of they didn't actually go for moves on you very often, or even at all throughout the race? Did that surprise you a little bit?
Yeah, although because there's some slow corners, if you're quite good and getting onto the power quite early, you can draw a space between them each time. So I think we must have been pretty evenly matched. So it must have been really difficult for them to catch up with me, really. And for once, I didn't really make any great mistakes, I don't think.
No, absolutely. It was a pretty flawless race from you, and it got you 4th place in the end. So congratulations on that result, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Yeah, I'd love to say I've been top 5 again, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, it's great to speak to you as always, guys. Take care.
Absolutely. We'll see you again next week. There we are, Phil Glover, 4th place here today at Suzuka.
Indeed, really strong performance actually for Phil. Really impressed with that. Again, just drove a really, really good defensive race as well. Actually, it wasn't. There was some places where it was maybe a little bit too aggressive, but in other places it seemed to be, okay. So overall, really, really good stuff. I've just seen we have indeed got Dave Rolston in, so I'm going to bring Dave Rolston in very, very quickly. David, thank you for joining us. P3 obviously inherited a couple of positions from Maxwell and Brown, but talk us through your race. 'Cause I know that for a majority of the race you were you were on your own, which obviously can be a little bit tricky in certain situations. But yeah, just talk us through the thought process for you during that race.
Well, it's always slow and steady and see what happens. So yeah, very, very pleased with the first top five I've had in this league. So to grab a podium is a bonus, but no, it's I know you have to push really, really hard. I'm not going to be as fast as the likes of Simon, Mike and Luke, and Graham was on fire today. So I just think try and find some momentum, nice steady pace, but see where I come and try and avoid trouble.
Well, as you say, and you know, considering obviously you started in P6, so good qualify, but then also moving forward and a podium position at the end, certainly can't complain. Obviously, going into the final third of the race series itself for this particular season. I imagine obviously we're going to take this and move forward with it. In terms of any sort of learning, what have we learnt from this week that you're going to be able to, anything we've learnt specifically that you're now going to be able to take and move forward with in the next third of the season?
No, we're finishing the season with this car. I mean, it's a new car. It's a bit Marmite, but I think I'm driving for something over 1,500 laps in practice of it, and I actually feel probably more comfortable with this than in the SR8. It's a bit more twitchy and nervous, and in certain conditions it's not great in. But no, just looking forward to competing in all the remaining races. So I missed a few over the summer holidays.
Well, we obviously look forward to catching up with you in the final races yet to come. But Dave, thank you very much for tuning in. Congratulations again on P3. Very well done. And we look forward to speaking with you next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care. So, Ewan, done and dusted, round number 8. Like I said, with a slightly smaller grid, didn't detract away from the action and racing that we saw. Big congratulations again to Graham Brown, but something that I'm sure we'll see Graham Brown back up at the front of the field once again. 4 rounds left to go. It's getting tight at the front of the field as well as the mid. A lot of driver changes will happen in terms of championship points, so we'll see how we get on with that, and we'll see what the championship points are next week. But very, very good racing as always today. Thank you to everyone that has been watching. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you once again with us. We'll catch up with you next week. I'm just looking through the calendar as well, just to see where we are next week. I'm not too sure if you have that information to hand.
I do. We're at Monza next week. Not the absolute. I don't think you were actually there for that race, but not the absolutely bananas, no chicaned madness that we had last season. That really was. It was a very fun race, I've got to say, but it was a bit mad. We've got the proper GP circuit this time. I think that means all the chicanes added in. All the first and second ones that we didn't have last season. So that should be good once again. Some real big circuits. We're talking about Suzuka being a big circuit. We've got Monza, Hockenheim, and the Nordschleife, of course, to come. Alton Park as well in there as well. So some great circuits coming up, and the championship margin halved here today. 24 points on the way in, 12 points on the way out between Luke Maxwell and Simon Edwards. And I've just seen that Luke Maxwell won't be able to be here for next week either. He'll be back for the 3 remaining rounds afterwards, but Simon Edwards absolutely has to capitalise on that next week and take the championship lead and really extend that championship lead in the hunt for his 4th title in a row.
Very much so. Well, we'll have to wait next week for that. But again, thank you everyone for watching. We look forward to catching up with you at Monza next week. Same time, don't miss it. Big thank you again to the organisers, the drivers, and everyone that is a part of the Radical Race Series. Without them, this series would not happen. But until next time, everyone, as always, pleasure to catch up. Take care, stay safe, see you next week.